A fuel leak thwarted NASA's second attempt to launch its new moon rocket, the Artemis Moon, on September 3rd. At the very last moment, launch controllers were unable to cool one of the four main engines back to the temperatures needed to handle its supercooled propellant. Safe to say, it'll be a while before we go back to the moon. In the meanwhile, let's catch you up on everything about NASA's latest failed moon launch. First things first, let's get into the details of what happened. The liquid hydrogen leak happened Saturday morning as NASA tried to fuel its massive Space Launch System mega rocket to launch Artemis 1, an uncrewed test flight to the moon from Pad 39B at the Kennedy Space Center. Despite 3 separate attempts to fix the leak, engineers weren't able to stop it and eventually stood down to assess the situation further. NASA officials explained how cooling the SLS rocket's engines before flowing cryogenic liquid hydrogen and liquid oxygen through them is a required step before the rocket can launch. While 3 of the engines passed that test, engine number 3 sadly did not, despite troubleshooting efforts. NASA stopped and restarted the flow of liquid hydrogen into the tank in an attempt to verify the leak and even proceeded with fueling the 322-foot tall rocket's upper stage while engineers worked the issue. Unfortunately, regardless of all these efforts, the initial assessment and the repair work will keep Artemis 1 on the ground for about 2 more weeks at a minimum. Next up, when's the relaunch? The first Artemis 1 launch attempt on August 29th was scrubbed after the team noticed that one of the 4 RS-25 engines that power the SLS core stage wasn't cooling down properly before launch. Analysis soon traced that issue to a faulty temperature sensor, and the team decided to push ahead with another try on the 3rd of September. It's pretty disappointing to see the second attempt in the same way. Jim Free, NASA's Associate Administrator for Exploration Systems Development, said in a briefing after the launch scrub that they'll not be launching in the current launch period. With that said, the launch period closes on September 6th. Artemis 1 will now have to wait until the next window to try again, which starts on September 16th and will extend until October 4th. Another window runs from October 17th to October 31st, and due to safety requirements, that could force the SLS rocket back into KSC's Cavernous Vehicle Assembly Building during the repairs. There's also a potential conflict during the earlier window. SpaceX Crew 5 astronaut mission to the International Space Station is scheduled to lift off on October 3rd from KSC's Pad 39A. Moving on, what's the damage? Mission team members successfully troubleshoot a hydrogen leak during the first try, but the one they saw on September 3rd was different. It was a lot bigger. The quick disconnect, which NASA refers to as the source of the leak and connects a liquid hydrogen fuel line to the core booster to power it for launch, is located close to the base of the SLS rocket. According to Mike Serafin, NASA's Artemis 1 mission manager, the leak happened after a brief inadvertent overpressurization of the fuel line that was 3 times the allowable pressure. Serafin explained this was not a manageable leak. The leak ended up leading to levels of flammable hydrogen gas near the rocket that were several times higher than the acceptable range, he added. Serafin said that as of yet, it's too early to tell if the leak was caused by the overpressurization event, which was triggered by an errant manual command from the Launch Control Center, or not, and elaborated that they want to be deliberate and careful about drawing conclusions because correlation does not equal causation. Now let's talk about how they plan to fix this. Everything aside, one thing is clear: the quick disconnect's soft seal gasket will likely have to be replaced. NASA engineers will be meeting next week to decide if this can be done on Launch Pad 39B. This would require a special enclosure to be built around the site, or if the 322-foot tall rocket must be rolled back inside the VAB for easier access. As of yet, the rocket's flight termination system needs to be tested, and to do that, the SLS rocket needs to roll back into the VAB, which is designed to destroy the rocket with explosives in case it veers off course. Every 25 days, NASA is required by the U.S. Space Force, which administers the Eastern Range for rocket launches, to test the safety system. It can only be done in the VAB. The 25-day deadline for Artemis 1 is right around the corner, so NASA will need a waiver to keep the moon rocket on the pad if it wants to fix the leak there. It's unclear at the moment if the mission team is planning to seek such a waiver. Finally, what's the conclusion? Serafin and Free said the picture will likely be clearer earlier next week once the Artemis 1 team has more time to analyze data and discuss their options. But they also stressed that calling off the launch today was the right move, as did NASA Administrator Bill Nelson, who also participated in the briefing. Nelson said that while they don't have the launch they wanted today, he could tell you these teams knew exactly what they're doing, and he was very proud of them. The 2 scrubs will end up costing NASA some money because Artemis 1 will need to use more liquid hydrogen and liquid oxygen propellant than was originally planned. But Nelson stressed that this extra expenditure is acceptable since the cost of 2 scrubs is a lot less than a failure. A crewless Orion capsule will embark on a protracted voyage to lunar orbit and back with Artemis 1. The mission, the first in NASA's moon exploration program Artemis, is intended to demonstrate that both vehicles are prepared to carry astronauts, which will first happen on the Artemis 2 voyage around the moon in 2024 if all goes as as planned. 10 miniature CubeSats are in flight on Artemis 1 to carry out various scientific experiments and test new technologies. The CubeSats batteries could be recharged if Artemis 1 rolls back into the VAB, although it's not yet confirmed this will be required. Now on to other news. First up, Intelsat's Galaxy has drifted into other satellite paths. Intelsat said the Galaxy 15 broadcast satellite that stopped responding to commands earlier this month shut down its payload on August 31st, reducing the risk of interfering with signals from any other spacecraft. However, Galaxy 15 continues to drift out of its geostationary orbit slot at 133 degrees west. According to an Intelsat spokesperson, the satellite will soon begin transiting through orbital locations licensed for other satellites. The spokesperson elaborated via email that Intelsat is working closely with impacted operators to minimize the impact of these transients. According to Intelsat, all customers were successfully transferred from Galaxy 15 to Galaxy 23 as part of the company's in-orbit protection program. When Galaxy 33, the replacement for Galaxy 15, is put into operation in November 2022 by SpaceX, the operator anticipates switching customers from Galaxy 23 to Galaxy 33. If the corporation complies with the Federal Communications Commission's final December 2023 deadline for clearing the spectrum, it will get about $5 billion in total from the agency. Moving on, China has begun its launch campaign for a final space station module. At the Wenchang spaceport, work is being done to put together a Long March 5B heavy lift rocket as China gets ready to finish building its Tiangong space station. It was revealed that Wenchang, the China Manned Space Agency, had recently received components for the 849 metric ton Long March 5B rocket. The 17.9 meter long, 4.2 meter diameter, 22 ton Mingxian Dreaming of the Heavens experiment module will launch from the rocket in the first half of October. The T-shaped Tiangong space station will be completed when Mingxian joins two earlier modules, the Tianhe core module and the Wenchang experiment module, in orbit. For at least 10 years, China plans to maintain a permanent human presence on the space station in order to gather expertise in human spaceflight, carry out a variety of experiments, and even explore economic opportunities. Finally, a Chinese megawatt-level space nuclear reactor passes review. A Chinese nuclear reactor designed to provide energy and propulsion in space reportedly passed a thorough performance assessment. The Chinese Academy of Sciences designed the reactor, which can produce 1 megawatt of electricity for propulsion and power supply in spacecraft. As reported by Science and Technology Daily and other Chinese media, the project was found to have performed satisfactorily by China's Ministry of Science and Technology on August 25th. Although the web reports from many publications have since been removed, cached and archived copies are still available. The studies contained no proposals for using the nuclear power system or technical information. For robotic trips to the outer planets, which receive very little energy from the sun, nuclear fission devices provide high levels of power and electricity propulsion, rendering solar power generation worthless. For crewed missions, they can also supply electricity on planetary surfaces. The initiative, which shows a strong Chinese interest in producing nuclear power for use in space, was launched in 2019 as a national strategic research and development program. That's a wrap for this video. Do you think NASA will be successful in their third attempt to launch the Artemis 1? Let us know in the comments below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. Goodbye for now, and see you in the next one.